global leader of eco-friendly future materials. Green tomorrow with POSCO.
Coming up on Arirang News, President Yoon briefing his cabinet on the state visit to the U.S. says the Washington Declaration has upgraded the security alliance between South Korea and the U.S. to a new paradigm based on nuclear force. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida is visiting South Korea for 2 days starting Sunday for a summit with President Yoon Trilateral cooperation between Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo is likely to be highlighted during what's to be the first visit by a Japanese leader since 2018. The Asian Development Bank kicks off its annual meeting in South Korea's Incheon. Held in the country for the first time in 20 years, the meeting brings together thousands of participants, including finance ministers of Korea, Japan, and China. Good evening. It's 9 p.m. here in South Korea. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. We start with the results of President Yoon's summit with U.S. President Joe Biden last week. While briefing his cabinet, President Yoon said the Washington Declaration has upgraded the security alliance between the two countries to a new paradigm. Also highlighted were the shared value of freedom and economic cooperation. Our top office correspondent Kim Do-yeon starts us off.
President Yoon said the Washington Declaration signed during the summit with the U.S. last week upgraded the alliance into, quote, a new paradigm based on nuclear force. This as he broadcast live his opening remarks for a cabinet meeting Tuesday and took matters into his own hands in hailing the achievements of his state visit to the U.S. last week.
상대의 선의의 기대는 가짜 평화가 아닌 압도적인 힘에 의한 평화로 미래 세대들이 안심하고 꿈을 키워나갈 수 있는 튼튼한 안보를 구축할 것입니다. 앞으로 미 핵자산의 운용에 관한 정보 공유, 공동 계획, 공동 실행 과정에서 워싱턴 선언을 잘 구체화해 나가는 것이 그 내용을 잘 채워 나가는 것이 중요합니다.
President Yoon added that the South Korea-U.S. Nuclear Consultative Group is more practical than NATO's nuclear planning group, as it involves only two countries with more frequent communication. He also said his state visit will pave the way for expanding the bilateral alliance in areas other than traditional security. Also noteworthy was President Yoon's repeating of the word freedom. More than 10 times during the 16-minute speech, he tied freedom as a value that all aspects of the expansion and cooperation are based on, including economic and culture exchanges.
특히 한미 양국은 자유의 가치를 공유하고 경제적으로 긴밀히 인프라가 연결되어 있기 때문에 프렌드 쇼어링을 확대해 갈 수 있는 최적의 파트너입니다.
Specifically, he said the combination of South Korea's manufacturing capacity and the core technology of the U.S. could create great synergy, as the two will be engaging more on AI and quantum technologies. President Yoon called on his aides for follow-up measures to make sure the new cooperations with the U.S. create more opportunities for younger generations. He motivated them, saying that with the first anniversary coming up for the administration, they should combine efforts to create a country with abundant freedom and innovation. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
This week, we take a close look on the outcomes by President Yoon's state visit to the U.S. And tonight, it's about economy. The impacts of the technological alliance between South Korea and the U.S. formed during the president's stay in Washington is expected to spread across many different sectors. Our Moon Hae-ryun has more.
One of the key outcomes of President Yoon's official visit to Washington last week was the technological alliance established between South Korea and the United States, particularly in terms of its economic impacts. President Yoon expressed his thoughts on the alliance in a cabinet meeting on Tuesday.
그리고 양국이 첨단 과학 기술을 공동 연구하고 공동 R&D 투자를 하게 되면 미국이 이끌어가는 핵심 원천 기술에 우리도 함께 접근할 수 있습니다.
The business roundtables and events held during President Yoon's stay resulted in 50 MOU partnerships and a total of $5.9 billion worth of investments in South Korea. 6 tech firms in clean hydrogen and chips announced a $1.9 billion investment to build factories in the country. And multinational materials tech company Corning Incorporated will be investing $1.5 billion over the next 5 years. With Korean firms such as Samsung SDI and LG Energy Solution to build electric vehicle battery plants in the US too, it's expected that this technological alliance will help tackle the supply chain crisis as well as creating more job opportunities. In addition to the series of investments, the bilateral summit also led to the formation of a special exchange initiative for students majoring in STEM subjects in South Korea and the US, those being science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. The two countries will invest a total of $60 million to support international exchanges to foster talent. This is in line with the agreement to establish a dialogue between the U.S. National Security Council and the Korea Office of National Security to promote joint research and development and expert exchange in the chips, batteries, biotechnology, and quantum science fields. Another outcome is the extension of the Mutual Defense Treaty to cyberspace and outer space, a bilateral defense agreement that establishes the commitment of the US and South Korea to provide mutual defense support in case of an attack from a third party. The Strategic Cybersecurity Cooperation Framework enables the sharing of information and technology, as well as cooperation in strategy and policies to prevent cyber crimes. As for the Space Alliance, South Korea's Minister of Science and ICT and the Deputy Administrator of NASA signed a pact to strengthen joint research and development in areas of space telecommunications and lunar exploration. 문혜련, Arirang News.
Another key economic agenda between Presidents Yoon and Biden last week was the U.S. CHIPS Act and the Inflation Reduction Act, on which the leaders have agreed to have close consultations regarding the concerns felt by Korean businesses. Our Lee Soo-jin provides some outlook for this particular issue.
There is still much to look forward to regarding the economic ties between South Korea and the U.S. President Yoon said during a joint press conference with President Biden that the state visit showed that both nations are dedicated to increasing investment and job opportunities in the high-tech industry.
전후방 효과로 나오는 다양한 넓은 이런 산업 생태계 구축에 또 많은 투자와 일자리의 기회를 가질 것입니다. 그리고 무엇보다 미래 세대에게 어떤 도전과 혁신 의지를
One of the most important items on the agenda for the state visit was the impact of the CHIPS and Science Act and the Inflation Reduction Act on South Korea's high-tech industry, namely its chip and electric vehicle sector. The CHIPS Act seeks to strengthen America's position in the semiconductor sector. The law, however, limits advanced chip production in China, making it difficult for major Korean chip makers such as Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix to continue investing in their Chinese plants. This comes as Korea sees an on-year decline in exports for the 7th consecutive month in April due to the ongoing slump in the chip market. But Biden stressed that the CHIPS Act was not for countering China.
And what happened was when we encouraged the investment through the CHIPS and Science Act, and we're rebuilding the economy of the United States with those semiconductors. It's not designed to hurt China.
Meanwhile, Korean automaker Hyundai was excluded from the U.S. government's list of cars eligible for tax credits under the IRA, as most of Hyundai's EVs are manufactured not in the U.S. but in Korea. Specific details regarding the expansion of tax benefits, however, have yet to be revealed.
Nothing's been disclosed yet regarding the details of what incentives the US will give to Korea in terms of the Inflation Reduction Act or the CHIPS Act.
The expert emphasized that domestic EVs have much potential in the U.S. market.
Tesla is the biggest in the market, but behind Tesla, South Korea is the first mover, the market innovator. Our country is good at manufacturing both EVs and batteries.
The expert added that this is why future details about the IRA's tax benefits will significantly impact the future of the Korean EV market. 이수진, Arirang News.
Seoul and Tokyo have made public a visit by Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida to the South Korean capital, set to begin this Sunday for 2 days. The planned visit comes less than 2 months after the two leaders held a summit in Tokyo, resuming active diplomacy between the two countries. Our foreign affairs correspondent Choi Min-jung reports.
Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida will be visiting South Korea at the end of this week to meet with South Korean President Yoon. This is according to Seoul's presidential office on Tuesday. Kishida will be paying a working visit for 2 days starting Sunday, with the summit anticipated to take place on the first day. Japan's foreign ministry also announced the trip in a press release, stating the two leaders agreed to resume regular visits to each other's country, or what they call shuttle diplomacy. The upcoming visit will be the first by a Japanese prime minister for a bilateral meeting in 12 years. Talking to reporters earlier on Tuesday, the Japanese leader said the summit will be a good opportunity to exchange honest opinions on ways to develop Seoul-Tokyo relations.
I expect it will be a great opportunity to give impetus to our shuttle diplomacy and have a heart-to-heart exchange of our views on accelerating Japan-South Korea ties and drastically changing the global situation.
Now, eyes are on whether this will lead to a sincere apology from Japan for the use of forced labor during its occupation of Korea. During the previous summit in Tokyo, Yoon and Kishida were able to mend soured ties, as the South Korean president proposed a plan to compensate the Korean victims of Japan's wartime forced labor through a third party instead of the Japanese companies held responsible. However, the summit concluded without a sincere apology or response from Japan. Seoul's foreign ministry said Tuesday that it expects Seoul-Tokyo ties to improve further in the future as there are more opportunities for the leaders to meet. Later this month, South Korea, Japan, and the U.S. will reportedly hold a trilateral summit on the sidelines of the G7 summit in Hiroshima. There, the nations are expected to discuss security cooperation against North Korea's growing nuclear threats. The three-way talk comes amid heightened diplomatic tensions as North Korea, China, and Russia criticized Yoon and Biden's new deterrence strategy, dubbed the Washington Declaration, inked during their recent summit in Washington. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
South Korea's National Security Advisor Cho Tae-yong and his Japanese counterpart Takeo Akiba will be meeting in Seoul on Wednesday ahead of the summit on Sunday. According to South Korea's presidential office, Akiba's 2-day visit will make him the first Secretary General of Japan's National Security Secretariat to visit the country since 2014. Cho and Akiba are scheduled to discuss a wide array of issues, including preparations for the summit, the two nations' bilateral relations, North Korea, and other local and global matters of mutual interest. Their talks will also include the first meeting of an economic security dialogue that President Yoon and Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida agreed to launch during their Tokyo summit back in March. The Asian Development Bank, committed to achieving a resilient and sustainable Asia and the Pacific region, started its 4-day annual meeting today in the city of Incheon, South Korea. It also brought together finance chiefs of Korea, Japan, and China for stronger cooperation. Our Lee Dae-yeon was there and files this report.
Seeking a rebound in Asia. The Asian Development Bank's 56th annual meeting kicked off on Tuesday in Incheon City, South Korea. Around 4,500 participants, including finance ministers, central bank governors, government officials of ADB member countries, and representatives of private sectors gathered to discuss key issues regarding Asia's recovery. On the sidelines, there was a meeting between the finance ministers of South Korea, Japan, and China. Korea's Chu Kyung-ho highlighted how trilateral ties can contribute to recovery from global economic crises.
Amid the global reopening, the three nations will expand cooperation not only in terms of economic sectors like finance and trade, but also travel, culture, talent exchange, and policy cooperation.
Korea will actively take part in this.
During a press conference, ADB President Masasugo Asakawa announced the bank's new landmark program, the Innovative Finance Facility for Climate in Asia and the Pacific, or IFCAP. It's where South Korea and other partners such as Sweden and the United Kingdom take part to respond to climate change and expects to lock up $15 billion in new ADB projects.
IFCAP financing will support both mitigation projects to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and adaptation projects to build resilience to the impact of climate change.
ADB's accomplishments are also on display in virtual reality for an immersive experience. Visitors can see the ADB's biodiversity wetland protection projects in northeastern China. Asked about the economic benefits of climate finance, a senior economist of ADB, Albert Park, says it's avoiding losses caused by rising temperatures.
So all of these things add up, and we find that without any changes, a high emissions scenario would lead to up to 24% lost GDP in Asia by 2100, by the end of the century. And so aggressively addressing climate change means all of those damages really turns into benefits of avoiding those damages.
The economist also added that even during the process of these aggressive actions, governments should make sure that the disadvantaged are protected in order to successfully transition into a green economy. Incheon, Arirang News.
Data show growth in consumer prices here in South Korea continues to slow down. For the first time in over a year, inflation accelerated below the 4% mark in April, thanks to falling oil prices. Yongsan has details.
South Korea's consumer price increases, a key gauge of inflation, have fallen below the 4% level for the first time in 14 months. The latest report from Statistics Korea show consumer prices in April rose 3.7% compared to a year earlier. That's down from a peak of 6.3% last July. This follows a drop in oil prices. Prices of petroleum products fell 16.4% on-year in April, marking the sharpest decline since May 2020. South Korea's benchmark Dubai crude came to $83.44 per barrel on average in April, which is nearly a 20% drop on-year. Prices that haven't dropped, though, include the prices of personal services, which grew faster at 6.1% on-year in April, up from the 5.8% in the previous month. This increase comes from the higher costs for dining out, as well as insurance and housing management costs. Officials from Statistics Korea say that given the high base effect, prices are expected to stabilize further in the second half of this year. But uncertainties remain regarding global oil prices, potential hikes in gas and electricity rates, and the $1 exchange rate. Yongsan, Arirang News.
The 10th International Electric Vehicle Expo kicked off on Tuesday on South Korea's Jeju Island. At the exhibition, companies around the world showed off their latest EVs with cutting-edge technologies and infrastructures. Our economic correspondent Shin Ha-young was there and files this report.
Jeju Island has been playing a leading role in increasing the number of electric vehicles in South Korea under its initiative of being a carbon-free island by 2030. The International Electric Vehicle Expo, an annual showcase of eco-friendly vehicles, got underway on the island on Tuesday for its 10th run, offering visitors a glimpse of both the present and future of EVs. During the event's opening ceremony, the governor of Jeju reiterated the island's current status regarding eco-friendly vehicles.
EV distribution on Jeju surpassed 30,000 last year and currently has the highest distribution rate among other regions of the country. Jeju is now also embarking on a new challenge, which is building a global green hydrogen hub.
More than 200 companies, including EV manufacturers, battery makers, and charging infrastructure-related firms, have participated in the exhibition. Woojin Industrial Systems, which is recognized as a key player in the domestic electric bus production sector, showcased its latest innovation, South Korea's first-ever dual-door electric bus model. This electric bus is equipped with a high-efficiency battery that can travel up to 412 kilometers, and several local governments have been reviewing it as an option for their public transportation in their cities. The exhibition also has an eco-friendly electric road sweeper on display. With the characteristics of an EV, it produces less driving and operational noise, making it easier to work in the early hours of the morning. This ultra-compact electric cargo vehicle is convenient for entering complex and narrow city alleys.
Existing vehicles like the Porter or one-ton cargo trucks are too big to drive around in the city. On the other hand, our vehicle, that's an appropriate size for the city, can handle the logistics while being better for the environment and easing congestion.
The exhibition will run until this Friday. 신하영, Arirang News, Jeju.
Nearing the first anniversary of President Yoon Suk-yeol's inauguration, a public garden for children has opened near the leader's office in Yongsan. It used to be a military compound which South Korean citizens were prevented from going into for over a century, but now it'll be opened to the public. Our correspondent Oh Soo-young gives us a preview of the garden.
A scenic space to find freedom, openness and a peace of mind. Seoul is opening a large public garden in the central district of Yongsan, in place of a former military compound that shunned South Koreans from its gates for over a century. President Yoon Suk-yeol on Tuesday hosted an outdoor lunch for media at the pine grass lawn within the Yongsan Children's Garden, ahead of its official opening at 2 p.m. on Thursday. Dedicated to future generations, Yoon said he envisioned the garden as a place for children to run and play freely on the grass.
Thursday's opening comes just a few days before the first anniversary of President Yoon's inauguration. The timing highlighted the South Korean leader's push for freedom and openness as he expressed willingness to spend more time with media to communicate freely and asked them to help in building a brighter future for the nation.
Located in front of the presidential office, with the National Museum of Korea to its side, the garden represents Yoon's pledge to communicate with and be closer to the people when he relocated his office to the Yongsan district. The opening of the garden gates is also historically significant for South Koreans. The 230,000 square meters of greenery is now being returned to the Korean public after it was occupied for 120 years, first by Imperial Japanese troops who installed the main entrance, then gradually converted into a US military base upon South Korea's liberation in 1945. Soon it will be open to all, featuring a huge lawn area as its centerpiece with a sports field to its east. To the west, a trail of houses with red tile roofs, formerly home to US military officials, stretches from the main entrance. Key locations include archives, a library and a hall that unwinds the location's decades of history in photos and records, from Japan's brutal colonization to the years of war between the two Koreas, bringing visitors to the present day where South Korea stands as a liberal democracy. To mark the launch of the garden, the exhibition hall will hold a light-themed display, and children's football and baseball games will kick off on the opening day. The opening hours are 9 a.m. to 6 p.m, with prior reservation required for first-time visitors. Reservations can be made on the Yongsan Children's Garden website 5 days in advance for Korean citizens and 10 days for foreign visitors. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Gold House, the nonprofit collective of Asian founders, creative voices, and leaders, has included K-pop sensations NewJeans as well as Kakao Entertainment's Global Strategy Officer Joseph Chang on its 2023 list of the 100 most impactful Asians and Pacific Islanders. The A100, as it's known, was revealed on Monday on Gold House's website. It describes NewJeans as a quintet that aspires to push the limits of K-pop with honest and authentic music that exudes youth. Chang, meanwhile, was introduced as the man who oversees the global expansion strategy and business of Korea's largest integrated entertainment company and the #1 market share leader in Korea's music industry. Also featured on the list are Japanese baseball superstar Shohei Ohtani and American actor Ki-hui Kwan, who recently won an Oscar.
Tomorrow is forecast to be another mild day with warmer than average temperatures. Daytime readings will rise even further tomorrow for most inland regions. For Seoul, highs will be about 3 degrees warmer than what we normally see at this time of the year at 25 degrees Celsius. Other regions will also see similar temperatures. Do keep in mind that wide temperature gaps of more than 10 degrees will follow as well. And we'll have no concerns about fine dust. Tomorrow, the entire nation will see decent air quality. For eastern regions, the air is still quite dry and some regions have advisories in place. For the coastlines, gusty winds are forecast to accompany at times. The combination of dry vegetation and violent winds can easily lead to fires, so please be extra careful. And morning temperatures will be about 1 to 4 degrees higher than today. Seoul will start off at 13 degrees. Highs in Seoul and Incheon will get up to 25, Gwangju 24, Gyeongju will be warm at 26 degrees. In between Thursday and Friday, the entire nation will see showers. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world. That's all for tonight's newscast. Thank you for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with the most up-to-date news. Have a good night.
I'm live! 저를 도와주시는 분들이
저희와 함께 해주시는 세션분들
아무리 봐도 없지. 펜션 같은데 아니라고 아무도 안 하는 거고.